All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we're diving deep into Tantra.
Ooh, yeah, Tantra.
Specifically, we're going to be looking at Osho's book, Tantra Transformation. If you really want to wrap your head around Tantra and Osho's take on it, well, you're in the right place.
We're going to clear up some of those misconceptions about Tantra.
Yeah.
It's not all about sex, you know?
Right. It's got this, reputation, but we're going to get past that.
Yeah.
Really uncover what it's truly about.
Yes.
You picked out some, really fascinating sections. I was, really going through them. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
So get ready to explore chakras, meditation, and this whole new way of looking at love, sex, and freedom.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild stuff.
It is.
One of the things that surprised me is that Tantra isn't about changing a world.
Oh, it's not.
It's about, personal rebellion.
It is. It is.
Yeah, about breaking free from what Osho calls slavery, all those expectations that society puts on us.
That's right. All those structures, yeah.
You know, I was thinking about that. It takes some serious guts to actually do that.
Oh, yeah.
To break free from all that and forge your own path.
Yeah.
Major courage.
It's a path of immense courage and self-awareness.
For sure.
You know, it's so important today.
Yeah.
You know, with all this pressure and all these expectations coming at us from all sides.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Osho uses this really great story about a rainmaker.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
Okay. So there's this village and there's a drought.
Yeah.
Terrible drought.
Okay.
And so they call in a rainmaker. And, they wait and they wait and they wait. Nothing happens. 3 days go by.
Yeah.
Finally, on the fourth day, the rain just starts pouring down.
Oh.
They go to the rainmaker and say, well, what have you been doing all this time?
Yeah.
And the rainmaker said, I was putting myself in order. He knew that once his inner world was in harmony, the outer world would reflect it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's about getting yourself right first.
That's it.
And then the change you want to see can happen out there. That's a pretty major concept in Tantra.
Yeah, it's core principle.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. How does Tantra actually guide that inner transformation?
Right.
Where do you even begin?
Well, Tantra focuses on this really fascinating idea of the inner man and woman.
Okay.
That reside within each of us. So think about your chakras, right? Those energy centers.
All right.
Along your spine. And Tantra focuses on the first two, your root chakra and your sacral chakra.
Okay.
These are the foundation, right, for your inner masculine and feminine energies.
Hold on. Inner man and woman.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Okay, so it means recognizing those masculine and feminine energies that we all possess. It doesn't matter what your gender is. It's not about what's on the outside. It's about this inner duality.
Okay. So we've all got, both of those energies within us.
Yes, we do.
And that's a key part of how Tantra approaches love and relationships.
That is exactly right. So, Tantra suggests that we fall in love.
Yeah.
When we recognize a reflection.
Yeah.
Of our own inner, either masculine or feminine, in the other person.
So it's deeper than just physical attraction. It's recognizing a part of yourself in someone else.
Yes.
Yes.
You're recognizing an energetic connection. And that leads us to another key concept.
Right.
The 7 chakras, these energy centers, they run along your spine. And, Tantra places a special emphasis on the first two.
Yeah, the root and the sacral. Are those connected to this, inner man, inner woman thing?
Yes, they are. So the root chakra, it's at the base of your spine. That's the seat of your male energy. And then the sacral chakra, it's in your pelvic area. That's associated with female energy.
So even when we're being intimate with someone, Tantra is saying, hey, stay connected to your own inner man and woman.
That's right. Yeah, it encourages you to do both. So imagine you're making love to the outer person, but you're also simultaneously journeying inward.
Whoa, that's a pretty different way of looking at sex.
It is. It is. And Tantra doesn't see sex as something that's, taboo or sinful.
Yeah.
In fact, it's considered the first rung on a 7-rung ladder towards samadhi. Enlightenment.
Whoa. Sex as a pathway to enlightenment. Okay, explain that to me. How does that work?
Okay, so Tantra encourages us to use that energy that's generated during lovemaking as a fuel for inner exploration and meditation.
So instead of just getting lost in the physical, sensations, you can actually use that energy for, spiritual growth.
Yes. And this leads us to Tantra's perspective on two of humanity's biggest fears.
Oh, okay. I think I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Sex and death.
Sex and death.
Yeah. Okay. Those are some pretty heavy topics.
Yeah.
What does Tantra have to say about them?
Tantra recognizes that, that fear
Yeah.
around those two things, sex and death. It's like a huge roadblock to personal growth. So, Osho wants us to confront them head on,
Yeah.
not shy away from them.
Okay. But how are those fears, like, connected to the chakras that we were talking about before?
Okay, good question. So think about the sacral chakra, right? The seat of female energy. It's linked to the fear of death,
Ah.
which, might seem counterintuitive.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. Why would the sacral chakra, which is all about life force energy, be tied to the fear of death?
Yeah, you're right. It's about creation, sensuality, the flow of life force. And so when we fear death, we essentially shut down that energy flow.
Oh, okay. So how do you deal with that fear? Does Tantra just say ignore it?
No, not at all. Tantra doesn't encourage suppression or denial. It's more about becoming aware of your fears, acknowledging them without judgment. And just that awareness alone, that can loosen fear's grip.
What about fear around sex? Which chakra is that connected to?
Well, there isn't one specific chakra, but think about how all that societal conditioning around sex, it can create blockages in several chakras, particularly the sacral and the solar plexus.
So if we're carrying around like shame around our sexuality, that impacts those energy centers.
It does, yeah. And that shame can lead to emotional repression, low self-worth, and a disconnect from your own body. So Tantra encourages a healthy expression of your sexual energy, seeing it as this vital life force to be honored, not shamed.
So it's about finding that balance between like going wild and being totally repressed.
Precisely.
Okay.
Tantra recognizes that both extremes are traps. So it advocates for a path of awareness where you can experience your desires, your emotions fully without being controlled by them.
This reminds me of that story Osho tells about the nuns and the girls leaving the orphanage.
Oh, yes.
Right.
That's such a perfect example.
Yeah, the Mother Superior is like warning those girls about men.
Right. She's painting this picture of sex as purely harmful.
Exploitive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Highlighting how, fear and shame are used to control people, especially women. So, Tantra challenges us to question those deep-seated beliefs and reclaim our own understanding of sexuality.
One that's rooted in like joy, connection, respect, not fear and shame.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Osho also tells this funny story about a countryman and his super intelligent dog that orders whiskey.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
I love that story.
What's that story like illustrating?
What's a lighthearted way
Yeah.
of illustrating the naturalness of our instincts? So the dog isn't burdened by societal expectations.
Yeah.
It simply expresses its desire. So, it kind of reminds us that we tend to overthink things. And a more natural and instinctual approach can be really freeing.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. But this awareness that Tantra talks about, how do you actually cultivate that? That seems like a pretty tall order in our like busy, crazy world.
Yeah, it is. It's a journey for sure.
Yeah.
Not a destination. Tantra emphasizes the importance of being present, in the present moment, being fully present in your body and your experiences.
Yeah, easier said than done.
Right.
Our minds are always like
Right.
racing off in a million directions.
Yeah. Osho talks about how the mind, with its constant fluctuations, keeps us trapped.
Oh, yeah.
On this hamster wheel of happiness and unhappiness, samsara,
Yeah.
or like the mind, with its endless thoughts and desires, is always looking outside for something to bring us satisfaction.
So how do we get off that hamster wheel?
Well, Tantra encourages us to shift our focus inward,
Okay.
to cultivate a sense of inner peace that isn't dependent on outside circumstances.
Okay.
That's where meditation comes in. Tantra uses various techniques to quiet the mind and tune in to the present moment.
And Osho contrasts those like fleeting external meetings with the eternal nature of that inner connection.
Right.
Right.
Yes. External connections are temporary. People come and go. Things change.
Yep.
But the connection that you build with yourself, that's lasting and is a source of strength that no one can take away.
Okay. I think we're starting to get a clearer picture of like Tantra's approach to personal transformation. But how does all this translate into our relationships with other people?
That's a great question. And it leads us to Tantra's perspective on love.
Okay.
So, drawing on C.S. Lewis and Abraham Maslow, Osho distinguishes between two types of love, need love and gift love.
Need love versus gift love.
Yeah.
All right. How do we tell which one is driving our relationships?
Okay. Think about a time when you clung to someone out of fear of being alone,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's need love, coming from a place of lack.
Okay.
Now imagine loving someone simply for the joy of seeing them blossom. That's gift love, flowing from a place of abundance.
Wow, that's a really powerful distinction. So need love is when we're like trying to get something from the other person, like
Yeah.
validation or security or something like that.
Exactly.
It comes from a feeling of being incomplete.
Yeah. It stems from a sense of incompleteness, and we cling to that person out of fear.
Right. And gift love's the opposite. It comes from a place of like already feeling whole within yourself.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, we got it.
Oh.
So it's not about needing the other person to complete us,
Right.
but about sharing our own overflow of love and joy.
Oh.
Osho emphasizes that this kind of love, it arises from maturity
Yeah.
and self-awareness.
It's not about possessing the other person or like trying to control them.
Right, it's not about control at all. It's about celebrating their freedom
Yeah.
and individuality. So someone once asked Osho, "Who are you without your disciples?"
Ooh, yeah.
And his response, I think, really highlights this.
Okay.
Self-sufficiency
Okay.
of true love.
Right. What did he say? I'm on the edge of my seat.
He said that if all his disciples disappeared, his essence wouldn't change.
Hmm.
He compared it to a flower
Okay.
that blooms
Yeah.
in the forest. It's fragrance. It's
Yeah.
there, whether or not anyone is there to smell it.
Hmm.
So, Tantra's encouraging us to cultivate this sense of wholeness within ourselves
Yeah.
so that our love isn't coming from a place of neediness.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And this ties into, Tantra's whole thing about like challenging societal conditioning.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we're taught to like seek validation from other people. We're taught to be afraid of their opinions
Yeah.
and to, just kind of conform
Yeah.
to their expectations.
Right.
But Tantra's like break free from that.
It is.
Yeah.
It says break free.
Embrace your individuality, develop that like inner strength so you're not swayed by all that outside pressure.
Yeah. And, Osho tells this great story
Oh, yeah.
about a missionary.
Yeah.
And 3 boys.
Okay.
And it perfectly illustrates how absurd it is
Yes.
to blindly follow those expectations.
Okay. Lay it on me.
All right. So the missionary, he keeps asking these boys, have you done any good deeds?
Yeah.
And all 3 of them claim to have helped an old lady across the street.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out they were all talking about the same woman.
Okay.
And they only did it
Yeah.
because everyone else was doing it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's like we just go through the motions
Yeah.
without really thinking for ourselves.
We do. So Tantra challenges us to question,
Yeah.
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 those ingrained patterns and start living more consciously
Yeah.
and authentically.
Okay, so how do we break free from those unconscious patterns?
That's the question. Osho has this interesting concept
Okay.
of man as a machine,
Oh, yeah.
right? So it's about recognizing
Yeah.
how those habitual patterns
Yeah.
and all that conditioning, it masks our true nature.
Right.
So we become like robots,
Yeah.
just reacting
Mm.
to situations
Mm.
in these predictable ways.
Right.
And, he uses these funny stories to illustrate this point.
Oh, yeah, he's great at that.
Oh, he's a master storyteller.
Yeah.
There's one about this guy works the night shift,
Uh-huh.
refuses to shave his whiskers until his favorite baseball team wins.
Oh, yeah. His wife's like totally disgusted.
Oh, she is.
But he's like locked into this pattern,
Mhm.
even though it doesn't make any sense anymore.
Right.
And then there's the couple who are like so stuck in their own schedules
Oh, yeah.
that they can't even find time to be intimate.
Yeah. It's sad, but
It's so true.
Wow.
Right. We get so caught up in our routines that we lose sight of like spontaneity,
yeah.
connection,
Right.
even with like the people that we love.
Exactly.
Well, how do we wake up?
That's the question
Yeah.
from this robotic existence.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Osho introduces 3 levels of awareness.
Okay.
The first level is simply watching your actions,
Okay.
becoming aware of your behavior and your reactions without judgment.
So you're like observing yourself from this neutral standpoint.
Yes, exactly.
Mm.
That allows you to start seeing your patterns
Mm.
more clearly
Okay.
and start making more conscious choices.
Okay. So that's like awareness level 1. What about level 2?
Level 2 is understanding your knowing.
Okay.
It's about becoming aware of the beliefs and assumptions.
Right.
shape your perception.
So it's like questioning those inner narratives, those stories we tell ourselves
Yeah.
about, ourselves and the world.
Exactly. And exploring the why
Right.
behind your actions.
Okay. What about the third level?
Okay, so the third level is the most profound. It's about experiencing the present moment in its fullness without any filters. So it's about dropping all that mental chatter
Right.
and just being present.
That sounds amazing, but also really, really challenging.
It is, but it's what Tantra is all about.
Okay.
Connecting with the present moment in all its richness.
All right. So now let's talk about Tantra's approach to enlightenment. How's it different from other spiritual paths?
Well, Tantra sees enlightenment not as this distant goal,
Okay.
but as this potential that's within you. Right now, it's about breaking free from all those limitations that we impose on ourselves, both physically and mentally.
Right. Osho talks about breaking the 4 seals: karma, jnana, samaya, and mahamudra. What are those exactly?
Yeah, think of them as those barriers that keep us from experiencing reality fully.
Okay.
So they represent
Yeah.
the limitations
Yeah.
of action, knowledge, time, and the illusion of separation.
And breaking those seals, that leads to a state of no mind.
It does. So no mind isn't about emptying your mind of thoughts. It's about transcending the limitations of the thinking mind.
Okay.
So imagine a state where you're free from that constant chatter of your
Wow.
thoughts. That's what no mind feels like. And it's a state of pure potential.
Osho uses that story of the Zen monk burning the scriptures to illustrate this point.
Right. The monk explains that, clinging to knowledge can actually hold us back. True enlightenment, it comes from direct experience, not from reading about it.
So it's about moving beyond the limits of thought into a realm of pure being.
Yes. And that brings us to another key aspect of Tantra. It's reverence for the body.
Okay, so how does Tantra view the body?
It sees the body as a temple, a sacred vessel for the divine. So it's about challenging those societal taboos and cultivating a sense of awe and respect for your physical form.
That's pretty different from a lot of spiritual traditions that view the body as something to be transcended or overcome.
It is, yeah. Tantra embraces the body in all its sensuality and power, seeing it as an essential part of our spiritual journey.
Osho uses those incredible erotic sculptures at the Khajuraho temple.
Yes.
To illustrate this. They're not just about sex, are they?
No, they are not. They're a celebration of that life force energy that flows through us.
Okay.
So Tantra sees them, not as obscene, but as this way to honor and transform that energy.
That's amazing. So instead of shying away from those desires, it's bring them into the light. Let's work with them.
Exactly. It's a bold approach, but it gets to the heart of Tantra's message, embracing the totality of your being, both shadow and light. And, Osho also points out sexually repressed people tend to be less intelligent.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It is, but think about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In the context of what we've been discussing.
Okay.
So when we suppress our sexuality, it's like creating a dam in a river. It restricts that flow of energy, not just emotionally, but mentally as well.
So our mental capacity is actually diminished when we're fighting our own nature.
That's the idea. Yeah, Tantra suggests that when we're in harmony with our sexual energy, when we embrace it, as this vital part of who we are, our minds actually function more clearly and creatively.
It's like we free up all this mental space to explore new ideas, engage with the world in a more vibrant way.
Exactly. And that leads us to another key aspect of Tantra. It's this importance of cultivating sensitivity in every area of your life.
So it's not just about sex, it's about bringing that same awareness and aliveness to everything you do.
Yes, you got it. So Osho talks about rediscovering the forgotten language of our senses. He wants us to slow down, really savor every experience, whether it's, enjoying a delicious meal or listening to music or taking a walk in nature.
Yeah, he even talks about the importance of touching your own body more.
Yes, he does.
Right, really feeling and appreciating your physical form.
It's about reclaiming that sense of reverence for the body, seeing it as this integral part of your spirituality, not something that's separate from it.
It reminds me of that story he tells about the woman who asks him, is it possible to experience God while you're washing the dishes?
Oh, I love that story. It perfectly illustrates how Tantra sees divinity
Yeah.
in everything,
Yeah.
even the most mundane tasks.
What does he tell her?
He says it's not only possible, it's the only way to truly experience God
Mm,
by bringing awareness and presence
right.
to every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
And, he encourages her to be creative, to find her own unique and joyful way
Yeah.
of washing those dishes.
It's like you can turn even a simple chore into an expression of your being.
Exactly.
That this creativity, it's not just about expressing yourself outwardly, but also about that, like, inner exploration.
Right. You're exactly
Yeah.
right. So Osho says that the more creative we are in our outer lives,
Mm-hmm.
the more we open up our throat chakra,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Well,
Which is associated with communication
okay.
and self-expression.
Okay.
And that allows energy to flow more freely to the third eye chakra,
Hmm.
which is all about intuition and spiritual insight.
So your outer creativity actually fuels your inner awakening.
It does. It's a beautiful cycle.
I love that.
Yeah. And speaking of love and relationships, Osho has some really interesting things to say about that, especially challenging this idea that we need to find the one.
Yeah, that's something a lot of people struggle with. So
Yeah.
what does he say about that whole finding the one thing?
Osho believes that idea of the one, it's just a limiting belief
Hmm.
that comes from, societal conditioning and a lack of courage, quite frankly.
So we limit ourselves by buying into this idea of one perfect soulmate.
Yeah. Osho suggests that, we're capable of loving many people throughout our lives.
Yeah.
And clinging to that idea of one perfect soulmate, it can actually prevent us from experiencing the fullness of love
Yeah.
that's available to us.
So he's encouraging us to open ourselves up to the possibility of like multiple loves.
Yes.
Throughout our lifetime.
Yes, and to recognize that love is a dynamic energy. It can flow in many different directions. It's not about limiting ourselves to one person or one type of relationship. It's about allowing ourselves to experience love in all its forms.
And Osho doesn't like shy away from talking about the challenges of love, does he?
No, he doesn't.
He talks about like heartbreak and
Yeah.
how like courage is so important.
Yeah, he says true love requires us to be vulnerable, to open our hearts, even though we know they might get broken.
Mm.
But, he also reminds us that heartbreak, while painful,
Yeah.
it can actually be a powerful catalyst for growth. So it can actually deepen our understanding of love
Okay.
and lead us
Mm-hmm.
to a more profound connection with ourselves and others.
He tells that story
Oh, yeah.
about the man who wants to commit suicide
Yes.
because his wife has secretly been in love with another man.
I know, right? It's a powerful one. The man is devastated. But Osho challenges his whole notion of trust. He says true trust isn't about controlling the other person
Right.
or demanding, their absolute fidelity.
Yeah.
It's about giving them the freedom to be themselves,
Oh.
even if it means they might choose to leave.
That's a pretty radical perspective on trust. Like, it requires such a deep level of self-acceptance.
It does.
And, like, a willingness to let go of that need to control.
Yeah. And, it speaks to Tantra's emphasis on freedom.
Okay.
True love, according to Tantra, it can only exist
Mm-hmm.
in an atmosphere of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So if we try to, control or possess the other person,
Yeah.
we're essentially suffocating
Yeah.
the very essence of love.
So it's about celebrating the other person's individuality, not trying to force them into, like, some mold
Right.
of what you think this should be.
Exactly.
And recognizing that love is a journey, not a destination.
Yes.
It's a constant dance of connection and separation,
Yeah.
of expansion and contraction.
Yeah, it is. Sounds like a lot of work.
It does.
It does.
Welcome back to your deep dive into Tantra. So last time we were talking about those incredible erotic sculptures at the Khajuraho temple and how they were actually like tools to help people on their spiritual journey.
That's right. Tantra is not about suppressing those desires. It's about transforming them. And those sculptures, they were a way for people to confront and release those deep-seated, often taboo desires.
So instead of like shying away from those images,
Yeah.
people would actually spend time with them to kind of purify their energy.
Yeah. It seems kind of counterintuitive, but
Yeah.
it's about bringing those unconscious urges to the surface so they can be transformed.
Okay, so it's like, let's bring those hidden desires into the light and work with them instead of pretending they don't exist.
Exactly. It's bold, but it speaks to that whole tantric idea of embracing every part of ourselves.
Even the shadow side, it makes me think of what Osho said about sexually repressed people tending to be less intelligent. That's a pretty provocative statement, don't you think?
It is, but think about it in terms of what we've been discussing. When we suppress a natural life force, like our sexuality, it's like creating a dam in a river. It restricts the flow of energy, not just emotionally, but mentally too.
So our mental capacity is actually limited when we're constantly battling against our own nature.
That's the idea.
Mm.
Tantra suggests that when we're in harmony with our sexual energy, when we embrace it as this vital part of who we are, our minds actually function more clearly and creatively.
It's like we free up all this mental space to explore new ideas and engage with the world in this like more vibrant way.
Exactly. And this leads us to another key aspect of Tantra, the importance of cultivating sensitivity in every single area of our lives.
So it's not just about sex, it's about bringing that same awareness and aliveness to like everything we do.
You got it. Osho talks about rediscovering the forgotten language of our senses. He wants us to slow down, to truly savor every experience, whether it's, enjoying a delicious meal or listening to music or even just taking a walk in nature.
He even talks about the importance of like touching our own bodies more, right? Really feeling and appreciating our physical forms.
Yes, it's about reclaiming that sense of reverence for the body, seeing it as an integral part of our spirituality, not something separate from it.
That makes me think of that story Osho tells about the woman who asks him if it's possible to experience God while doing something as ordinary as, washing the dishes.
Oh, I love that story. It perfectly illustrates how Tantra sees divinity in everything, even the most mundane tasks.
What does he tell her?
He tells her it's not only possible, but it's the only way to truly experience God, by bringing awareness and presence to every aspect of your life. And he encourages her to be creative, to find her own unique and joyful way of washing those dishes.
So it's like you can turn even a simple chore into an expression of your being.
Exactly. We can infuse even the most ordinary tasks with a sense of artistry and joy.
So this creativity isn't just about expressing ourselves outwardly, it's also about that inner exploration we were talking about before, right?
That's right. Osho says that the more creative we are in our outer lives, the more we open up our throat chakra, which is associated with communication and self-expression. And that allows energy to flow more freely to the third eye chakra, which is all about intuition and spiritual insight.
It's like our outer creativity fuels our inner awakening.
Exactly. It's a beautiful cycle. And speaking of love and relationships, Osho has some really interesting things to say about that, especially challenging this idea that we need to find the one.
Yeah. This is something a lot of people struggle with these days. So what does he say about that whole like finding the one thing?
Osho believes that this idea of the one is just a limiting belief that comes from, societal conditioning and, quite frankly, a lack of courage.
So we limit ourselves by buying into this idea of one perfect soulmate.
Yeah. Osho suggests that we're capable of loving many people throughout our lives. And clinging to that idea of one perfect soulmate, it can actually prevent us from experiencing the fullness of love that's available to us.
So he's encouraging us to open ourselves up to the possibility of like multiple loves throughout our lifetime.
Yes, and to recognize that love is a dynamic energy that can flow in many different directions. It's not about limiting ourselves to one person or one type of relationship. It's about allowing ourselves to experience love in all its forms.
And Osho doesn't shy away from talking about, the challenges of love, does he? He talks about heartbreak and how courage is so important.
That's right. He says that true love requires us to be vulnerable, to open our hearts, even though we know they might get broken. But he also reminds us that heartbreak, while painful, can be a powerful catalyst for growth. It can actually deepen our understanding of love and lead us to a more profound connection with ourselves and others.
He tells that story about the man who wants to commit suicide because his wife has secretly been in love with another man.
That's a powerful one. The man is devastated, but Osho challenges his whole notion of trust. He says true trust isn't about controlling the other person or demanding their absolute fidelity. It's about giving them the freedom to be themselves, even if it means they might choose to leave.
That's a pretty radical perspective on trust. It requires like such a deep level of self-acceptance and a willingness to let go of like our need to control.
Absolutely. And, it speaks to Tantra's emphasis on freedom. True love, according to Tantra, can only exist in an atmosphere of freedom. If we try to control or possess the other person, we're essentially suffocating the very essence of love.
So it's about celebrating the other person's individuality, not trying to force them into some mold of what we think they should be.
Exactly. And recognizing that love is a journey, not a destination. It's this constant dance of connection and separation, of expansion and contraction.
It sounds like a lot of work.
It is. but it's also incredibly rewarding. When we approach love with awareness and courage, it can truly transform our lives in amazing ways.
Okay, so how do we even begin to cultivate this kind of love? Where do we start?
Tantra suggests it all starts with self-love. When we learn to love and accept ourselves fully, flaws and all, it creates this foundation for healthy and fulfilling relationships with others.
It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. We need to, fill our own cups first before we can truly share our love with others.
I love that analogy.
Hmm.
And remember, this self-love isn't about being narcissistic or egotistical. It's about recognizing our inherent worthiness, about embracing every part of ourselves with compassion and understanding.
And from that place of self-acceptance, we can then approach relationships with more freedom and authenticity.
You got it. We're no longer looking for someone to complete us or validate our worth. We're coming from a place of wholeness, ready to share our love and joy with another sovereign being.
This brings us back to something we touched on earlier, the difference between need love and gift love. Can you unpack that a bit more?
Of course, need love, as we mentioned, stems from a place of lack or incompleteness. It's fueled by fear and insecurity. We cling to the other person out of this, like desperate need to feel whole or loved.
And that can cause a lot of problems in relationships, right?
Absolutely. Need love often leads to jealousy, possessiveness, and control issues. It can be exhausting for both people because it's rooted in insecurity.
So how is gift love different?
Gift love comes from a place of abundance and inner fulfillment. It's not about needing the other person to meet our needs, but about sharing our own overflow of love and joy with them.
So it's a more selfless love.
You could say that. It's not about what you can get from the other person, but about what you can give. It's about celebrating them, supporting their growth, and giving them the freedom to just be themselves.
And Osho's clear that this kind of love only comes from someone who's done their inner work, right?
Exactly. It requires a certain level of maturity and self-awareness. It's about cultivating that sense of wholeness and self-acceptance that doesn't depend on external validation.
You need to have a strong sense of self before you can truly love another in this way.
That's a great way to put it. And that leads us to another important point Osho makes, the difference between love and duty. He actually suggests that serving others out of a sense of duty can be harmful.
That's interesting. We're often taught that duty and responsibility are good things. So why does he say that serving out of duty can be harmful?
He's not saying that duty is always bad, but he points out that when we act solely out of a sense of duty, it can create this unhealthy dynamic in relationships, one based on obligation and resentment.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine you're constantly doing things for someone out of a sense of obligation. They might start to feel indebted to you, which can create an imbalance of power. The person who is always serving might start to feel resentful, and the person being served might feel guilty or burdened.
It becomes transactional, like we're keeping score instead of acting from a place of genuine love and generosity.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Osho encourages us to shift our focus and act from a place of love, not duty. When we do things for others because it brings us joy, because it feels aligned with our hearts, there's no expectation of reciprocity. It's a pure expression of love, free from any strings attached.
It reminds me of that story he tells about the young boy who resents his parents because they've always treated him with this, sense of duty, not love.
Yes, that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
The boy feels unappreciated and misunderstood because his parents' actions haven't come from a place of genuine affection. It shows how acting from duty can actually create distance in relationships.
So how do we make that shift from acting out of duty to acting out of love?
It starts with becoming aware of our motivations. We need to ask ourselves why we're doing something. If it's coming from a place of obligation or fear, it's probably not an act of love.
And if we realize we're acting out of duty, what can we do to change that?
We can start by examining our beliefs about love and service. We can ask ourselves, what would it look like to act from a place of genuine love and generosity without expecting anything in return?
So it's about shifting from, what do I have to do to what do I want to do?
Exactly. And that shift can be incredibly liberating. When we act from a place of love, we're aligning ourselves with our true nature, with that universal energy that flows through all of us.
Then that brings us back to, Tantra's emphasis on living in alignment with the natural flow of life, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that we're all part of something much greater than ourselves. And when we live in harmony with that universal energy, our lives become more joyful, fulfilling, and meaningful.
This has been so eye-opening. It seems like Tantra is not just a spiritual path, but a way of life, a way of approaching everything with a sense of awareness, joy, and reverence.
You're getting it. Tantra invites us to embrace every part of ourselves, to celebrate our sensuality, to challenge our conditioning, and to live authentically. It's a path of liberation, transformation, and ultimately love.
I feel like we've barely scratched the surface. I know we have more to discuss, but unfortunately we're out of time for this part.
Don't worry, we'll be back with the final part of your deep dive soon. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to your deep dive into Tantra. We've gone pretty deep so far, talking about love, relationships, and really questioning everything society throws at us.
We've only just started. You know, Tantra's all about looking at life with fresh eyes and taking this like really holistic and integrated approach.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that spirituality doesn't have to be about escaping the world, but about embracing it, like fully.
Exactly. And speaking of embracing the world, Osho talks a lot about the ego and how it actually keeps us trapped in this limited view of reality.
Ooh, I want to hear more about that. What's he say about the ego?
Well, he sees it as this like construct of the mind,
Okay.
this false sense of self
Totally.
that we create
Okay.
based on like our conditioning,
Hmm.
past experiences, and those deep-seated beliefs.
So it's not really who we are at our core.
No, it's more like a mask we wear,
Okay.
to protect ourselves.
Okay.
The ego loves separation, comparison, this need to feel like superior or special. It's constantly looking for validation from the outside world, leads us to chase those like temporary pleasures,
Right.
wants to define us by our achievements, possessions, our status.
And that's what Tantra sees as the main obstacle to true freedom.
Yep.
And enlightenment, this ego that's always looking outside of ourselves.
It keeps us on this like endless hamster wheel of craving and aversion.
Yeah.
Always searching for something we think will make us happy, but it makes us blind to our true nature, which is pure consciousness, pure being.
So how do we, dismantle this ego? It sounds like a pretty tough opponent.
It's not really about destroying it. It's more about transcending it.
Okay.
Tantra encourages us to, become aware of its games, see through its illusions, and detach from its need to control.
That sounds pretty abstract. How do we actually do that?
It's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
It involves meditation, self-inquiry, and this willingness to look honestly at those darker parts of ourselves.
Yeah, okay.
It's about recognizing how the ego shows up in our lives, whether it's through jealousy, anger, greed, or that need to always be right.
This makes me think of that story Osho tells about the man who's obsessed with proving that God exists.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's so caught up in those intellectual arguments.
Right.
He misses the whole point.
He's searching for God outside of himself.
Yep. When God's already there inside him.
It's like the ego's trying to use spirituality
Yeah.
to boost its own importance.
Exactly. Tantra's reminding us to let go of those mental constructs.
Yeah.
And just approach spirituality with humility
Mm-hmm.
and an open mind.
So it's not about collecting knowledge or trying to prove how righteous we are. It's about directly experiencing the divine within ourselves.
Yes. And that brings us to another key aspect of Tantra. Embracing both the masculine and feminine energies.
Yeah, we talked about this a little earlier. I'd love to go deeper.
Okay.
How do those energies play a role in our spiritual growth?
Tantra sees both those energies as essential for wholeness.
Yeah.
So masculine energy is associated with, action, assertion, direction.
Okay.
Feminine energy is about receptivity,
Mm-hmm.
intuition, flow.
And we all have both, right?
We do.
No matter our gender.
It's about finding that balance between them.
Right.
Letting them dance together.
Okay.
Osho points out that a lot of spiritual traditions have focused mainly on the masculine.
Yeah, emphasizing discipline, control, transcending the body.
Exactly. And while those are important, Tantra suggests they're only half the picture.
Yeah.
True enlightenment comes from integrating both, honoring both spirit and body.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between doing and being, between striving and surrendering.
Yes, it's about embracing the fullness of being human.
Right, being powerful and receptive, assertive and compassionate.
It's like those sculptures at Khajuraho.
Yeah.
They show not just sexual union, but this beautiful interplay between those energies.
It's true. It's like they embody that whole tantric principle of embracing everything, including our sexuality. It's like a reminder that the spiritual path isn't about denying our desires, but about using them to wake us up.
And that transformation happens through awareness.
Right. It's like by bringing those hidden desires to the surface, we can actually start working with them consciously.
That's it. It's about being intimate with every part of ourselves, even the shadows.
Right.
When we deny our desires, they just create blockages in our energy. But when we acknowledge them, we can turn them into sources of power
Right.
and creativity.
This is so different from the way we usually think of spirituality.
It is.
It's not about purity or renunciation or suppressing our desires. It's about saying yes to life.
Yeah. That's what I love about Tantra.
Yeah.
It's more holistic, life-affirming. It reminds us that we're not here to punish ourselves or deny our human experience. We're here to celebrate life
Yeah.
in all its richness, its messiness, to embrace our shadows and our light, and to wake up to that divine potential within us.
This has been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
My pleasure.
I hope this has sparked something for you listeners. What questions are bubbling up for you? What parts of Tantra do you want to learn more about? Keep those questions alive and keep diving deeper.
Remember, this journey of self-discovery, it's a lifelong adventure.
Yeah.
Tantra offers some powerful tools to help you along the way, so you can navigate with awareness, courage, and a whole lot of joy.
That's what it's all about. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep embracing who you truly are.